Discretion is advised. Your mama black.
This program contains language and sequences some viewers may find disturbing.
Right!
What's up, guys? So today we have a story coming out of Chicago. 4 Black Lives Matter supporters kidnapped a white special needs Trump supporter.
Yeah. Bitch ass. Yeah, bitch ass nigga, boy. Big fuck Donald Trump, nigga. Fuck white people, boy.
Anything white.
Say fuck Donald Trump.
Fuck Donald Trump.
Here's a question for you. Do the following black people in the video I'm about to play, do they look like people who are running scared for their lives from the evil, oppressive white supremacy?
Breaking news, nigga. Breaking news.
Facts don't care about your feelings.
These niggas are crazy. That's racist.
A Facebook Live video of the beating, racial taunting, and scalping of a special needs victim has gone viral, and now 4 people have been charged and arrested. CNN reports 18-year-old Jordan Hill, Tesfaye Cooper, and Brittany Covington, and 24-year-old Tanisha Covington have been charged with hate crime, felony aggravated kidnapping, aggravated unlawful restraint, and aggravated battery with a deadly weapon. The video has since been deleted, but media outlets and online sources have copies of it. In the 30-minute disturbing video, you see multiple assailants, officials have identified as black, taunt the white victim, saying racially charged statements against Donald Trump and white people. They threaten and hit the man who is tied up in a corner with plastic bound over his mouth. At one point, they scalp him with a knife. Fox News reports the mentally disabled man met a man that he knew and some other people in a Chicago suburb. They drove him in a stolen car over to a home where they tied him up and tortured him. And then one of the people in the group, a woman, captured it live on Facebook and even turned the camera towards herself multiple times. Officers found the man wandering outside. Chicago Police Superintendent Eddie Johnson calls the act sickening, and he's amazed by how horribly the victim was treated. For Sequence Media News, thanks for watching.
I don't know if this is an evil, I don't know what is. CNN called it a beating. This looks like torture to me. Yeah. And the White House today refused to even weigh in on whether or not it was a hate crime because they said it was an active investigation. Now, how many active investigations has the White House weighed in on?
Latest. So I know Chicago police just held a press conference about this tape. What did they say? What do we know about this?
And Anderson, I just got off the phone with police with a few more disturbing details. They tell me that the victim in this particular case was targeted because he has a mental health challenge. They described him as someone who was very tender, and while it took some police work, they said they were able to find the offenders, like you mentioned, 4 people in custody. But let me set the scene here. According to police, officers were patrolling on the west side of Chicago when they saw a man disoriented and traumatized. So the police officers sent him to the hospital, actually, Anderson. And then there was a battery call that came in. Police officers responded to that, and they were able to link the evidence from this battery call to this disoriented man, and then there you have it.
So is this revolting attack a sign that anti-Trump hysteria is fueling violence? Does it stand for anything larger? And is the national media downplaying its existence? We're joined now by nationally syndicated radio talk show host Richard Fowler. Richard, thanks for joining us.
Good to be here, Tucker.
So I was interested to see this morning that the New York Times This Week in Hate feature had no mention of this story. Why would that be?
I don't know. I'm not an editor of the New York Times. I think that this story is...
Why did the Washington Post bury it? Why did the Boston Globe bury it?
I don't work at either of those sort of publications, but I will say this. I think this is a hate crime. This is a hate crime. This is a hate crime. I'm happy that the new attorney, the new Cook County prosecutor charged these people with this, and it's wrong. And I think what we need to now focus on, whether it's black or white or gay or straight, is making sure that we continue to have hate crime laws like this throughout the country that protect people like this individual that was brutalized by those 4 maniacs.
Well, I don't believe in hate crimes laws because I don't think you should prosecute people based on their thoughts. But I do believe
you don't think this is a hate crime?
I think hate was involved, as it often is in crimes. I'm not defending this crime. I'm merely saying it's a separate category. Hate crimes devalue the idea of equality under the law. So I'm opposed to them. But I'm also opposed to lying and downplaying something that is obvious.
A man being held hostage and apparently tortured in Chicago. We warn you, it is disturbing.
Donald Trump, white people, boy.
No. Goof.
Yeah.
My sister with
you. Oh,
man. My sister said this not funny, y'all.
In moments, we'll be joined by David Wohl and Richard Fowler with reaction. But first, we check in with Trace Gallagher, who has the new details on the breaking news. Trace?
Megan, police believe the victim, who is mentally disabled, met a man that he knew and some others in a Chicago suburb, and that they drove him in a stolen car to the west side of Chicago, took him to a home, tied him up, taped his mouth, and began torturing him for between 24 and 48 hours. At least 30 minutes of the torture was streamed live on Facebook, and the woman who was taping acknowledges that she knows it is streaming live. During the video, which, as you say, is very hard to watch, they cut the man's clothing, saying they're going to get him naked and ask him to kiss the floor. Then they kick him, punch him, cut his scalp, and laugh about how much he's bleeding. Throughout the video, you can hear the four suspects go after Donald Trump and white people. Watch again.
Donald Trump, white people, boy.
No. Goofy.
Yeah, man.
My sister said with y'all.
Thinking it's slight.
Oh, man. My sister said this not funny, y'all.
Later, they asked the victim to say how much he loves black people. Police are now investigating this as a possible hate crime and a possible kidnapping. They also say it could be a case of young people making stupid decisions. Here's Chicago Police Superintendent Eddie Johnson.
It's sickening. It's sickening. You know, it makes you wonder what would make individuals treat somebody like that. You know, so I've been a cop for 28 years, and I've seen things that you shouldn't see in a lifetime, but it still amazes me how you still see things that you just shouldn't.
Officers found the victim distressed and wandering the streets of West Chicago. They say he's out of the hospital and is being interviewed by detectives, but is having a very difficult time communicating. The four suspects, including at least two females, are all 18 years old. They remain in custody.
Good afternoon. Yesterday, when we addressed the deplorable acts committed on social media against an adult male with mental health challenges, I made a public commitment that CPD would hold the individuals in that video fully responsible for their actions. I also made it very public that we would conduct a methodical investigation based upon the facts, including whether or not this incident would be considered a hate crime. Let me be very clear. The actions in that video are reprehensible. That, along with racism, have absolutely no place in the city of Chicago or anywhere else for that matter against anyone, regardless of their race, gender, state of mental health, or any other identifying factor.
He pretty much kidnapped the individual. It was 2 African-American women and 2 African-American men. They kidnapped this white special needs Trump supporter, and they subjected him to a bunch of, honestly, like torture pretty much. They cut his scalp with a knife, and you could see his skull on video, which will show.
Boy, pack that ass, grabbing ass, nigga. Fuck, cut his motherfucking head off. Oh, shit, boy. Damn, you cut his shit. I put a whole patch out of this shit, boy.
They cut his scalp with a knife, and you can see right down to the bone. He was bleeding throughout the second half of the video. They slapped him in the face numerous times. At one point, they choke him out.
Hey, shout out to PBG. Shout out to PBG. Them niggas real, shorty. Them the real niggas.
As well, and then they also kick and hit him numerous times. So one of the female individuals named Brittany Herring live streamed the whole thing. It's about 30 minutes long in total, and it includes them smoking and drinking. At numerous points in the video, the girl Brittany refers to them all as like drunk and things like that. And throughout the whole video, they're saying fuck white people and fuck Trump, and they also make him say fuck Trump while choking him out and hitting him. It's a really tragic event.
Ugly bitch ass nigga. How you do that?
Ain't no blood on the blade, though. Bitch ass nigga.
Ooh, that bitch gone.
So pretty much what happened was this white special needs Trump supporter was meeting a friend in Chicago, and then he ended up in an apartment with them. I guess they kidnapped him, or it's still unclear what happened, but he ended up there huddled in a little corner while they live streamed this and kept assaulting him repeatedly. Even at one point in the video, one of the African American males says, "Oh, we're gonna put your body in a car, put a brick on the wheel," and then he makes a noise like the car's gonna go off a cliff. And so the whole thing was a very violent event. Throughout the whole event, the guy is actually tied up.
This PPG hothead. Hey, this PPG hothead speaking. Y'all see this nigga right here? We finna put this nigga in the trunk, and we finna put a brick on the gas and let that bitch. You understand?
We doing something right now, boy. We ain't hurting his ass later. You should have did that, bro. The police find they gonna search that blood, bro. Your ass, bro. Now that's your blood, bro.
His ass.
Now take this fucking. Nah, watch out, bro. Watch out.
His ass.
Take
Yo,
this off.
bro,
No,
great.
cut this shit. Cut it off.
Why
No, cause I got my blood on this shit, bro. Hey, cut this off. Boy. I'm gonna make your ass walk on butt ass. What's the song about, nigga? Fuck the song.
No, as you can see, as they've kidnapped a white dude, taped him up, taped his mouth shut, assaulted him, as the video will show. I can't play the whole thing because it's really lengthy. But if you want to see the entire video, I'll put a link to it in the description below, and you can see the entire video. Kidnapped a white dude, taped him up, taunted him, tormented him, beat him up. Apparently, they live under a system of white supremacy. They forced the white dude, as you can see in the video below, they forced the white dude to say fuck white people, to say fuck Donald Trump. Clearly a racial paradigm, clearly alluding to the idea that the white man's an evil racist. You know, you think if you lived under a system of white supremacy, after kidnapping a white dude, you wouldn't be nonchalantly posting the video live streamed to Facebook. That's right. They even live streamed the fucking video to Facebook.
And we know if this was on the other foot here, if these were white Trump supporters doing this to a young black disabled man.
Oh, forget it.
The president would be weighing in, Sharpton, Jackson, they'd be on the scene. Trump would have to answer for this. White America would have to answer for this. But it's just sad because when you hold different races to different behavioral standards, I believe that's more prejudice because that's almost assuming that certain races aren't equal. And that's what I have a problem with.
Video on social media that was able to fill in the picture. Now, before we show you this video, we should warn you that it is very disturbing. Take a look.
Yeah, grabbing that nigga. Fuck, cut his motherfucker.
Oh, shit, boy.
Damn, you cut it.
I put a whole patch out of this shit, boy.
Why you do that?
Ain't no blood on the blade, though.
That was you get.
Donald Trump.
Oh, my brother's my heart.
Hey, right here?
He represent Trump.
This PPG hothead. Hey, this PPG hothead speaking. Y'all see this right here? We finna put this in the trunk, and we finna put a brick on the gas and let that. You understand?
That was broadcast live
from
on social media while they were doing that, right? And then, I mean, they're talking about Donald Trump. They're saying, I mean, it seems like there's, in their words, some sort of a racial dimension to all this.
You know, it really does sound like that, Anderson. We asked the police about that, and of course the obvious question is this a hate crime? Is this somehow related to politics and all the tensions post the election? And police say that at this point they're still investigating, but they do believe, they tell me, that this is more related to this young man's mental health challenge. Now, you saw in that video, he's white. The offenders you saw in that video are black, so it definitely raises all of these.
And it's clear that this man's race and his political position played a role
absolutely, which is
in
why
the torment that he endured. Well, and that's not at all clear from the accounts that were prevalent today. The Associated Press, in its first account of the story, didn't mention the racial and political angles of the story. I wonder why that is.
I don't know. I don't work for the Associated Press. I think what we can
say
here...
You theme here? Is he got the New York Times,
what
AP?
I can say here is that the charges came down from the prosecutor, which is the final arbiter. There's no journalist is an arbiter of this case.
Right.
The prosecutor is, and eventually a jury of these four individuals' peers, and those came down and said this was a hate crime. It was fueled by race, it was fueled by ideology, and it's wrong. And that's why we need stronger hate crimes in this country to prevent incidents like this, and incidents that go the opposite direction.
Yeah. So we can have the government dividing our thoughts and prosecuting.
No, that's
not
what I'm saying.
But here's the point I'm making. When a sensational crime like this occurs, the press is very quick, and people on television are very quick. Instantaneously, they draw massive conclusions. They extrapolate from it, and they say this is a national trend. When that lunatic shut up the black church in the South, Dylan Roof, we had a national conversation on white racism. Now, I'm not against such a national conversation, but if you're going to extrapolate from something like that, why the instantaneous downplaying of this as 4 crazy people? I don't think, and an isolated disabled man.
No, I don't think. I don't think anybody's isolating this at all. I think if you look at if you look at the reporting that we've seen today, if you look at people just reporting the facts, which is this individual was charged with a hate crime, which means this prosecutor, based upon the standards for a hate crime in the state of Illinois, thought that these 4 individuals were in violation of a hate crime, just like Dylan Ruth, according to the statutes in South Carolina, were in violation of a hate crime. That's for prosecutors to decide, not for journalists.
Now, David Wohl, who's an attorney and a Donald Trump supporter, and Richard Fowler, who's a nationally syndicated radio host and a Fox News contributor. Deeply disturbing, mentally challenged young man, tortured for a day? First of all, what kind of crimes are we looking at here, David, and do they include a hate crime, increase because of the
underlying
the racial undertones and the language we heard?
Yeah, the underlying crimes, Megan, are kidnapping, torture, assault with a deadly weapon, false imprisonment, and probably several others. Now, what I found a little bit disturbing is the cops in a press conference said they're not quite sure if this was a hate crime. It's being investigated, and that's after viewing this video. Now, Megan, rest assured, if the races were reversed and they said that, they'd be fired the next day. I think Richard would agree with that. So what's going to happen here is if they only prosecute it regarding the state crimes and they leave the hate crime enhancement out. Don't forget who's going to be the Attorney General of the United States in a couple months, Jeff Sessions. I guarantee you he takes this very seriously. This could easily turn into a federal civil rights prosecution along with several other piggybacking federal crimes, and the hate crime would definitely be included. So they need to take this very seriously. They can't allow political correctness to dictate the prosecution here.
There was never a question whether or not this incident qualified to be investigated as a hate crime. But as I said yesterday, we need to base the investigation based on facts and not emotion.
Facts don't care about your feelings.
I'm pleased to announce that the investigation has concluded and charges have been approved by the Cook County State's Attorney for hate crimes, aggravated kidnapping, aggravated unlawful restraint, and aggravated battery with a deadly weapon against all 4 of the offenders in custody. 3 of the offenders have also been charged with residential burglary, and 1 of the offenders has also been charged with robbery and possession of a stolen motor vehicle.
Now, YouTube probably will delete this video, and YouTube probably will even maybe potentially delete our video. This isn't the first time there's been violence done against Trump supporters, and every single time we've done a video on Trump, on violence against Trump supporters, YouTube has actually deleted it. So YouTube, you know whose side they're on. They're pretty much the globalists. Any violence against Trump supporters, they try to say, oh, we're flagging this video because there's bullying in it. But we're actually just trying to get it out there that there is a lot of violence against Trump supporters. These are 4 Black Lives Matter supporters committing a heinous act against a special needs individual. It really is sickening. But you know, YouTube has no problem just trying to clean that shit totally from the internet.
His ass ugly. Nah, watch out, bro. Watch out. His ass ugly. Yo, bro, great. Cut this shit. Cut no. Quiet. No, I got my blood on this shit, bro. Hey, cut this off, boy. I'm gonna make your ass walk on butt ass. What the fuck you talking about, nigga? Damn, G4, your ass tweaking,
4 black teens under arrest in Chicago in connection with the beating of a white teen. The suspect shouting anti-Trump slurs as the attack was broadcast on Facebook Live. Let's discuss now CNN political commentators Peter Beinart, Alice Stewart, and Matt Lewis, also Simone Sanders, a former press secretary for Bernie Sanders. Okay, so listen. There's certain things that I can't say that it's a hate crime because Chicago police won't say it. They're saying they're still investigating it. They're not they're not done with their investigation. But when you look at this, Simone, they're saying F white people, F Trump. How can you say it's not a hate crime against a white person?
So first I want to say this is absolutely sickening. It's unfathomable that so much hate and anger can fill up a person where they go out and they think that this is okay. And then it was stupid to do it on Facebook Live, but that's a whole nother story. So this is absolutely sickening. But I'm going to say something that's probably not very popular. We cannot callously go about classifying things as a hate crime. Motive here matters. So was this for hate of Donald Trump, the president-elect, because of things that he has said, or was this for pure hate of white people? That matters, because if we start going around and anytime someone says something or does something really egregious, really bad, and sickening in this instance, in connection with the president-elect or Donald Trump, or even President Obama for that matter, because of their political leanings, that is slippery territory. That is not a hate crime. Hate crimes are because of a person's racial ethnicity, their religion, their gender, a disability. It is your political leanings because someone doesn't like your political leanings and they do something bad to you. That is not a hate crime.
Who does that other than an infantile child who's spoiled by his and her black privilege? Because this is another prime example, you guys, of black privilege. A group of black thugs, including a black female, nonchalantly live streamed the kidnapping of a white guy under the evil system of white supremacy for everybody to see, and they're laughing and they're giggling through it like it's no big deal. Does that sound like somebody who's running for their lives in fear of the evil, oppressive, racist, systematic, racist, white privileged white man? No, that sounds like somebody who's getting a free pass in life and doesn't think there's any consequences to their actions. Doesn't sound like white supremacy to me.
I thought that was disgusting. The microphone, they just took the whole place over. That will never happen with me. I don't know if I'll do the fighting myself or if other people.
Make one of the fact that, like, okay, they found out about this because the neighbor called in because those the criminals had gone down and bashed in a door. The people watching Facebook, I still haven't figured out if anybody who watched it actually called the police. That kind of creeps me out, right?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, we, you know, here in New York, I forget the name of the woman who was being attacked, was it many decades ago? And people said, you know, no one came to her aid, even though it was evident. I'm not sure people believed that they were watching something that was actual. No, it was another one. It was even before that, where somebody in an apartment building was being abused, and everybody knew it, and they said everybody could hear her scream, and nobody did.
Yeah, it's an urban legend, though. Right. That the people, when they found out later, actually did do something. But I get your point.
Yeah, but I'm not sure that people who were watching knew that it was in fact real, as opposed to something that was staged. But to come back to join the earlier conversation with Jesse, I don't think there's any question about the hateful and racist nature of this crime. But where I would object is when you say, well, but there's some distinction to be made that if the shoe was on the other foot, if this was a black person being abused by white people, that, oh, there would have been an outcry. We have instances where that happens, and I don't think that there's any immediate, like, shouting. In fact, there was a case where a black kid was taken by some whites and abused with a hanger. I didn't hear about it until today in the context.
Juan, they barely covered this on the broadcast news last night.
Are you kidding? I heard about this last night, and not only did I hear about it from my friend
this story
Greg
was so sanitized.
I saw it
Most of the wire copy didn't even mention the race of the perps or the victim.
No, initially.
Well, Tucker
and the
Carlson had this on at 7. It was on right
before. Juan, if you don't think this would be played differently
I
by
heard
the media,
about it right
this was
away.
A racial component
that's
in
where
reverse,
I don't
you're out of
believe
your
so.
mind.
Well, okay, but I'm out of my mind on lots of topics, but I just don't.
Including this one.
I just don't. As I said to you, in reading about this, I see where this had happened to a black kid.
The victim was also a classmate of one of the suspects, and he was held for a minimum of at least 24 to 48 hours, and his scalp was cut open repeatedly. So I think everyone knew this wasn't a joke, staged, or fake.
Oh, I don't know that, but what I know, because people watching, apparently, this was your point, Greg. I'm not sure if they understood the horror. Well, that this was real. This was blood.
Well,
this brings a human being.
Commenting on Facebook that this is not funny, this is awful.
This is awful. Yeah. But were they comment? But anyway, the whole issue is one of, is this legitimate in terms of people saying this is a hate crime? I don't see that this needs to be an argument about the hate crime, although I remember with some intensity what happened to George W. Bush when he was governor of Texas, and this fellow Byrd was dragged by some whites behind a truck. And then the NAACP went after the governor at that time and said that he was not sufficiently upset because it was white people who did it. I thought it was totally illegitimate. That was an argument about hate crime statutes. It wasn't an argument about the horrific nature of the crime.
Yeah.
But so it gets used on both sides, and I think it weakens us as an American people because, you know, it's not like Dylan Roof doesn't exist going into a black church and shooting. No.
Right.
But it's not that then people responded by saying, oh yeah, that's a reason for more racial hate and racial
Okay, well then are there going to be satellite trucks parked outside this trial in Chicago where there are a Dylan Roofs trial? I doubt it.
Oh, you doubt it? Why do you doubt
yeah,
that?
I doubt it. I'll make you a bet right now this story gets much less coverage than Dylan Roof.
You know what I think, though, Jesse? I think in this era right now of so much racial tension and some of it attached to Trump, it's going to get a ton of attention.
But we also draw conclusions from events. That's part of our job here in the commentariat. Simone Sanders, a Democratic strategist in CNN you might know, said this, quote, "This is not a hate crime. Hate crimes are because of a person's racial ethnicity, religion, gender, a disability. It isn't your political leanings because someone doesn't like your political leanings."
disagree with Simone.
Okay. You had Don Lemon saying, I don't think it's evil. I don't think it's evil. I think these are young people, and I think they just had bad home training.
Last night on the Kelly Files, I called this a hate crime. I was probably one of the first Democratic commentators to do so because it's a hate crime. It's a hate crime. It's wrong. It's vile. It's disgusting. And what this should cause us to do, Tucker, is it should cause all of our Americans, whether you're black, white, Hispanic, Jewish, Muslim, to say, we are moving into a new presidency. How do we come to the table? Because this is not America, right? This is, I would argue, this is not America as a Tulsa, Oklahoma shooting where that man was shot down by the police officer. How do we come together and have a conversation about making our country better? How do we have a conversation about looking beyond race, looking beyond gender, looking beyond realizing that we're all hardworking Americans?
You know the truth, which is you walk into a certain neighborhood, you're the wrong color, and you're liable to get in trouble. Okay, that is just true. I know it firsthand. So you can't say that out loud in most venues because it doesn't fit a pre-prescribed narrative.
But that's part of the problem. You need to have these conversations,
okay,
right?
Good.
So when I walk into when I go to Friendship Heights, which is in the D.C. area, or any high-end boutique, and I'm followed around by a sales clerk because I happen to be African American, it's the same as you going and getting in trouble in a black neighborhood. We have to have these conversations in order for us to break the stigma down. So when it happens to me, I go to the manager and say, you know, your clerk is following me. I'm in here to make a purchase. This is wrong, and we need to work on fixing it.
A man called Colin Borchers from the Washington Post wrote this, and I think it sort of sums up perfectly the attitude from the left here. If the attackers had been white and the victim had been black, the incident would have, of course, conjured America's ugly history of white mobs committing violence against black people. There's no parallel history of the reverse happening or anything remotely approaching the same scale. Now, that may be right on the merits, but it is an obvious attempt to downplay the significance of this because what's at stake, as you know, is victim status. And the idea that a Trump supporter might be a victim of a crime based on his political belief. Okay, but nobody wants to give up
the prosecutor
status here.
The prosecutor is very clear in her
determination. Then why are all these liberals trying to say that this is just one isolated example when you've seen time and again?
You cannot. Here's the problem. This is not. I would argue that a hate crime is a hate crime. It's not. It doesn't have a political tilt to it. Dylan Ruth. We don't blame Republicans for Dylan Ruth. No, and we shouldn't blame Democrats for these four.
Are you joking?
I never blamed Republicans.
Well, good
for
for you. I'm glad to have one reasonable person on this show.
And I think there's very people. Dylan Ruth is a rage maniac racist.
Were you in this
country
when that happened? I mean, but by the way, let me just say, I agree with what you're saying.
Right.
But what I disagree with is your unwillingness to acknowledge what's been happening for the past 3 or 4 years in this country. There's a mass shooting that fits a prescribed media narrative, and all of a sudden everyone
I think,
who supports Trump or is white is responsible.
Let's be very clear. So after the Dylan Ruth case, there was a campaign to take down the Confederate flag from flying over South Carolina, which was the right thing to do. And the governor, Republican governor,
they banned the Dukes of Hazzard from television, as if every Southerner or every person who liked to watch the Dukes of Hazzard was implicated in a crime.
Everything to do. No. That's two different conversations. I think what the Dylan Ruth incident brought to light.
They did that after Dylan Roof.
Well, let me make the point. Well, after the Dylan Roof incident, what brought to light the fact that in South Carolina, the Confederate flag flies over the Capitol. Both Democrats and Republicans in South Carolina agreed it was a bad idea. Waving the Confederate flag, which is the flag that stands for racism, bigotry, and hatred, is wrong.
As if that had something to do. Look, it's demagoguery that tries to tie people who are not responsible for a specific crime to. In my mind,
yes,
they banned the Dukes of Hazzard from television.
No, I think this is a hate crime. I don't care what race you are, and that's why we have hate crimes in this law, and folks like Joe Biden have worked night and day to keep those laws. And I think, so politics aside here, this video is disgusting, and I think we as a nation have really got to sit down, black, white, yellow, blue, orange, purple, and have a conversation about how we really come together, how we come together. Christians and Muslims and Jews and all have this larger conversation about we're all American at the end of the day, and this is sickening.
But let me ask you something about that, because does this one act, this disgusting, awful, criminal act, is it any sort of a larger statement on who we are as a people, or are these just thugs? And not young people making stupid decisions, as we know, thugs who are torturing a man. But does it say something about us as Americans?
Well, here's the thing. I think what this election shows us, whether you're Democrats or Republican, our nation is pretty much equally divided. Some people sit on one side, other people sit on the other, and it's really time for us to come together and you know, really have a conversation about how we work together to keep America being the great country that it is. We've only thrived when we work together. Some of our best moments are when we work together. When we passed the Voting Rights Act in '65.
But you tell me, David, whether you think that people who are so depraved that they would do this to another human being, one who is mentally challenged no less, can be reached by an effort at the federal or any other level for us to come together.
Well, you know, Megan, I think you're right about that. I mean, and the other thing is, they think somehow that sort of invoking Trump is sort of their ticket to doing this, because everybody hates Trump. They see celebrities hating on Trump, and so they put his name in there, and somehow that fuels or that gives them justification. But I will say this. It's another social media problem, Megan. We see social media propelling this kind of thing. They think it's cool if it's on social media. They get their 15 minutes of fame. But the good thing is that somebody saw it on social media and apparently reported it. So to that extent, you know, it turned out well.
Well, I mean, I beg to differ on that. I mean, I think if it wasn't on social media, then we wouldn't be talking about it tonight.
I know, that's right, because
Agreed.
the video is so shocking that it requires attention, and it became national news in an instant.
Good afternoon. Our victim in this case was dropped off on the 31st of December by his parents at a McDonald's in Streamwood, Illinois. He was to meet his friend there. Jordan Hill, who actually ends up being one of the offenders in this case. When he was dropped off, it was under the premise that he would be spending the night with his friend. So his parents naturally didn't look for him until the next day. They then subsequently report him missing in Streamwood. He comes to Chicago. He's at the McDonald's, and Jordan Hill goes and steals a van in Streamwood. He then picks up our victim, who has no knowledge that the van is stolen. He assumes it's Jordan's. They drive to the west side of Chicago, where they basically are driving around and visiting friends for the next 2 days. The victim sleeps in the van. On the morning of the 3rd of January, they go to the address on Lexington, which is where 2 of the other 3 offenders reside, the 2 sisters. And then about several hours later, that's when they bind him and start the assault on him. He is able to escape when a downstairs neighbor calls the police complaining that of all the noise upstairs. The police respond, and the 2 female offenders now go downstairs. They're angry that the police were called. They kick in the door of that apartment. Hence, they are both charged with the burglary. That gives our victim an opportunity to get out, and then he's observed walking down the street by our 11th district officers.
This is clearly a hate crime, as it's for Black Lives Matter supporters, it's for African American individuals, it's a white special needs Trump supporter. Throughout the whole video, they're saying fuck white people, fuck Donald Trump. They say fuck white people numerous times. So I mean, this should be investigated as a hate crime. Right now it's being investigated as battery. The Chicago police are saying the special needs white individual knew one of the other individuals, and they're saying that maybe because he knew that, maybe it wasn't a kidnapping and it was battery. But either way, it should be a hate crime, because they clearly bring up that he's white. They clearly say fuck white people through the whole thing. They cut his scalp with a knife. They slap him in the face. They kick him in the face. They hit him off screen and on screen. And they really just subject him to torture. I mean, I'd say all the individuals should get the death penalty. But, you know, that's the common sense thing to do. But this still is Obama's America. So he'll probably say, oh, hey, Black Lives Matter, want to come to the White House and show me your fucking briefcase? But you know how it is, guys. It's sad. It's sick. We got about 2 weeks left until Trump blows these motherfuckers right out of the wall. Take care, guys, and God bless.
I've done many videos in the past on black privilege. One classic from over a year, almost a year and a half now, or almost 2 years, I think. It's called Black Privilege. The freedom to be racist and get away with it. Classic video and a must watch to understand this coming age of black privilege, because sometimes the oppressors become the oppressed, and the oppressed become the oppressors. People get caught in generational generalizations about what group is oppressed and which one isn't. And if the tables ever turn, it takes a while for people to realize that that oppressed group ain't so weak and timid anymore. And, you know, black privilege is like the Hebrew Israelite brown racists. And apparently I actually am one of the saved, because apparently I fall under one of the 12 tribes of Israel because I'm Cuban. And yeah, I do got a decent tan, so I don't think these dudes would deny that I am one of God's chosen brown people. The Hebrew Israelites, as they stand on the street corners and yell at hundreds of white people, saying they're going to kill them, fuck you, cracker, hate your guts, we're going to enslave you, we're going to rape and murder your daughters, as the daughters are right there walking by. These black privileged motherfuckers, because that's all they are, they're spoiled brats who don't know what it's like to be held responsible for their actions. That's why they get in the street corner in a supposedly evil, racist, oppressive white country and preach as if they're not going to get any consequences to their actions. So that is how infantile these children are. And I just want to do a real quick video on this, another example of the ridiculous black privilege. But here's the bad news. You know, privileged groups tend to be weakened groups, because when you have privilege, you're spoiled. When you have privilege, you don't really have to go through adversity. Your life is made easy for you. And people who have easy lives are spoiled people, and spoiled people are weak and soft. And unfortunately, being and having black privilege is not going to empower you or bring in an age of black supremacy, unfortunately.
I mean, Dylan Roof killed people. He killed a group of 9 people. So we
try and blame
this. I would keep them in a different, as heinous as this is. That was, you know, death.
Right, and to try to tie it to Donald Trump and say that because this is going to be tied to him, because racial things are tied to him. I mean, this is outrageous. No, this is a hate crime committed by 4 eager suspects who actually said that they hoped that this video would go viral and held him there for an extended period.
A conversation about 4 individuals who committed a hate crime and the Confederate flag.
Just apply the same standard.
I have.
To all crimes.
I absolutely have. Okay. But you can't lump the whole party in with it. That's the argument I'm making. It's a hate crime. It's wrong. It's disgusting. It shouldn't happen. It should be a time to bring our country together.
You're not being honest, Richard. You're
I'm being absolutely honest. How are you going to tell me what standard I'm applying?
We're out of time.
Good to see you, Tom.
Nice to see you.
Donnelly, Donnelly. While at our call, we observed our victim. He was walking with Jordan Mills, at which time I observed him wearing a tank top inside out backwards with jean shorts and sandals on. He was bloodied, he was battered, and due to the cold weather conditions, I approached him for a field interview, at which time, after talking to him, he didn't seem like he was very discombobulated. He was injured, he was confused, and at which time I called an ambulance. I left him with 2 other officers, Officer Adamski and Officer Cronin, to continue my investigation. I left him with them, which revealed that he was missing and endangered out of Streamwood, Illinois. They contacted Streamwood Police and conducted an investigation, which revealed and put the pieces of the puzzle together for what we have right now.
times.